Okay, well,
Wait, we gotta wait for the
We're on.
videographer.
We're going.
We're live?
We're live.
Man, you're good.
alrighty, so clarification. I'll direct you to Article 15A. It should be 84 hours of work in A as opposed to 80. To fall in line with the 12-hour schedules. But then, what that means is we intend those 4 hours above 80 to count as overtime, just like the county does. So the payment of overtime is still triggered after 80.
So could we kind of short circuit this, so can I just go ahead and propose 86 and we can wind back up at 84 right now, or do we have to kind of go through that dance?
86 work weeks? Or-
No, 86, yeah, I mean, the Fair Labor Standards Act, that lets us go up to 86.
You absolutely can counter
Okay.
with a different number.
All right. Well, I was gonna just short circuit it, and counter with the 86 now and just agree on 84.
Well, we would prefer that any proposal or a counter be in writing, that we can
Okay.
then respond to it.
Okay.
But we're happy to entertain any counters.
Got it. All right.
And then, in terms of other cities that use the shift bid, I'm going to have a comprehensive list in the city of Florida, email that to Jeff so that, with reference, so that can be available and
I'm
utilized.
particularly interested in Central Florida.
Absolutely. I tend to concentrate on that and then, expand from there.
So Holly, what are you trying to do on 16.1? Because just this is language that we've kind of been pulling out of contracts. It's obsolete now that Florida has gone to the early voting options.
Okay, well, if I can just clarify one more thing about 15, because
Okay, sure.
we did step out
Yeah.
to discuss that, in terms of use of comp time, by not putting specific language, we just are implying that the default is the rules and regulations under federal law. And we're happy to entertain any counter that the city might have. But that's, by it not being in there, it would default then to federal law.
Okay.
So I hope that at least ties up those questions for the moment.
It does.
16.1. Florida, unlike other states, does not provide public employees with the time to vote, on their shift. And so, as a means to be a gap filler, because there's no law or regulation out there, we want to ensure that bargaining members will be able to exercise their right to vote in elections. And 16.2 is just having to do with union ratification votes. So whenever there's if there's an MOU that needs to be ratified, this particular contract, that the union can just grab a quick room in the police department and guys can come in and vote, so that we don't have this protracted ratification vote, and then we can just, tell the city, here's the result, go ahead and schedule it for your commission meeting or whatever you need to do. But that would make it easy administratively as far as conducting those votes. Certainly unions aren't entitled to use any, room, any city room or building, and so that's why we're proposing this, since there's no plain entitlement under the law. But we think it has a benefit to both sides, since it enables things to happen more quickly. Okay, so bereavement leave, Article 17.
Is there anything different from the current bereavement leave?
Yes.
What's different?
All of the domestic partners that can now get married, registered domestic partners, I don't think that it even exists anymore. Those are the,
I thought they did away with registered domestic partners.
what, everyone
Would
is.
these be
they pretty much
grandfathered
have.
ones in?
They pretty much have. I think we were trying to, in case there were those who had registered but didn't later decide to get married.
There is no registration program.
I don't think so.
The county doesn't have a registration program, and the city doesn't have a registration program. There are no registered domestic partners.
Well, it would be somebody who's registered outside of this particular county, in the interest of capturing that relationship if someone moved to Orange City. All we're trying to do is be as inclusive as possible as far as, people's committed relationships. So, if any of the language is unfavorable, we try to be more inclusive than less. If we need to pare it down, then we're open to that. But this, in light of dynamic family relationships, lots of step families, step parents, we were trying to account for modern day family configurations. And also the fact that a lot of transplants, both in Central and South Florida, are from other states, a lot of times up north, be it New York, be it New Jersey. And so the language about the funeral and burial occurring outside of the state of Florida is in recognition of the fact that our communities are sometimes, full of transplants as opposed to people who were just born in Florida. Florida has that as sort of a unique attribute. And so we wanted to cover that situation where somebody's parents were, located in New York, for example.
So is it currently 3 and 5?
And then we wanted to give the provision that if somebody is really struggling emotionally, that perhaps because of their duties in a safety-sensitive position as an officer, if they need just a couple more days to get their bearings, they can request 2 days of their own PTO, not given by the city, but they can have an additional 2 days that won't be unreasonably denied, but it's their own time. So we made clear in 17.4 that this is just for full-time bargaining unit members, and that in 17.5, we gave the city the absolute unreserved right to request documentation to establish, oh yes, in fact, there was a funeral in New York, as opposed to, as opposed to the funeral actually taking place in Florida. So the city has the ability to ask for that documentation that would give the proof that it did comply with the requirements of the article. If there are no questions, I'll proceed with 18. Um, 18's rather technical. There, doesn't bear much explanation. It just intends to cover the different situations in which an officer would or sergeant would appear in court.
How does this differ from our current policy?
Currently 2 hours?
So we're requesting 3 hours, which is an increase.
Is there a reason why? It seems like in most of these benefits, you're just asking for an increase. Is there a reason why?
Well, I think we, in light of compensation that we think is fair to the officer, in our discussion, we came up with this based on what the members wanted. So that was the, in terms of why this versus another, this is one of the asks of the membership and what they would like to see for this.
Just want more.
Well, I think as opposed, oftentimes across the board pay raises are more difficult lifts, to where there are
We haven't seen
ways
that yet.
to.
We haven't seen that, and you've got everything here but that.
Well,
We're waiting to see what you're gonna hit us with on that.
As stated at our last meeting, I'm not gonna do anything without the whole thing.
well, with all due respect, we're still giving you proposals. We haven't gotten any proposals from the city. I don't need to get into that conversation or rigmarole, or go through that. But I was just mentioning that for the sake of explaining that sometimes a way a city can provide compensation is outside of a strict across-the-board wage increase, which tends to be more expensive than perhaps other ways which provide benefits to officers but are not the same heavy lift as an across-the-board. That's all I was trying to emphasize. And I think,
So you're saying that if we do this, then you'll take the citywide pay increase?
well, I think that's an unfair extrapolation.
No, I'm asking. It's that,
No.
that's what it sounded like you were saying, is that this is an offset for the fact that we don't have the ability to pay big pay increases.
Well,
I thought.
I'll interpret what you asked as a question.
Okay.
It all depends on what's been put in front of us as a proposal. I was simply introducing the concept of other types of pay as a means of compensation for an officer, and stating the mere fact that sometimes these are easier for and more appealing for a city than a sizable across the board. Certainly a sizable across the board would be enthusiastically accepted by the officers, but in the interest of trying to give other options and think outside of the box on compensation, that's just one of the ideas.
This is your Chinese menu.
Well, I don't think that's a fair assessment either, Jeff. I think, you know, this is our first agreement. We're trying to find ways to advance the officer's interest in a way that is in the most palatable way to the city possible. We're offering different options. You know, it's up to the city if if something's a non-starter and it's not something that's gonna work, but we're trying to negotiate dynamically in a way that gives a lot of options, a lot of things for us to talk about to improve conditions. So that's all. Okay. Um, 19, special benefits, is a proposal that really only comes out of the bargaining unit members' pockets. It's a death in the line of duty deduction, so if an employee dies in the line of duty, his brothers and sisters will step in by doing a $25 payroll deduction, and that will be deducted from their paychecks. And so, you know, in showing of solidarity, helping with funeral expenses, the beneficiary on record with the city will receive that money per member that's been deducted by from the paychecks. So the city deducts the money, presents IUPA with a check, IUPA gives the check to the member to help their family out when the officers die in the line of duty.
Just an observation, it's kind of an insulting amount of money for a small department. They're paying like $400, you know?
Well, listen, we thought $400 is better than nothing,
It was
and,
just an observation.
It was less than that, because this just said.
And-
well,
dues
dues paying
members.
members, so
So
it's
it's gonna be
not,
less than,
Less.
more insulting.
It's
200, I think.
Pretty insulting.
Well, obviously, I mean, the city's more than welcome to pitch in whatever they
No,
want.
but, no, you guys.
To supplement
pitched
that.
in $1,000.
Unfortunately, we are small, but it's, I mean.
I've just.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's even, this is coming out of your guys' checks.
Right.
Yes.
Why would we care, but it's just like,
Right.
it's something, you know, I mean, not you know, in coming to a number that it's not too unbearable to eat from your own paycheck, but you still wanna do something for your, you know, you can always give more, there's no restriction on that, but this is just to, you know, it's a devastating situation, and a lot of times that easily accessible money to pay for funeral expenses or cremation or what have you is tough to get initially, so this helps facilitate that. Article 20, my understanding is that this is in line with the city policy as it exists. That you can get pay in advance by submitting the request in writing, you know, through your command staff prior to the requested leave. And so that this is at least.
I'm
the
not-
regular paycheck, is that what you're talking about?
I'm not aware of that being a policy.
It was in our old policy. I don't
Right,
know if it's new.
it is not
But-
in the new policy.
Well, just for clarification,
It's a
though,
regular
it
check.
says a bargaining unit member may request his or her accrued PTO. Is it, if you're taking 2 weeks off, you mean just the 2 weeks of the PTO, not your 700 hours
Right.
of accrued
Oh,
PTO?
yes, yes.
Okay, whatever the
I-
time is
I
on.
put, yeah, I put accrued just, you know, to indicate that you can't, you know, get paid for future PTO that, you know you're gonna get, but you haven't quite gotten yet.
Gotcha.
Yes, former policy, this is something that we want to see remain.
It does not exist today.
You wanna bring it back?
Article 21, grievance and arbitration procedure. So we're basically proposing a three-step grievance process. And it starts with the deputy chief or designee, then goes to the chief, and then goes to the city manager. So, and then terminates in a final step, which is arbitration. Parties split the cost of arbitration. You know, you have to adhere to the timelines that are set forth there in the process. Fairly standard language, that if neither the city nor the union will be responsible for the cost of agreements if an individual files it themselves, not with the assistance of the union. And then we put an election of remedies provision here, 21.19. So this harkens back to to our last negotiation session where, for example, we talked about the advantage of being able to have, address a claim, for example, a claim of discrimination through arbitration, as opposed to the cost that might be associated with a lawsuit. Well, Chapter 447 of the Florida statutes also gives you the option, for example, to do a civil service process or the grievance and arbitration process, but you can't do both. So in the interest of protecting the city, we've taken it a step further. If there's a lawsuit that could be the basis of what has occurred, that could also be a grievance, could also go through the city's grievance or a civil service process, you have to pick one. So you can't, go through the arbitration, then file a lawsuit on something that has to do with the termination, or this, the subject matter of your grievance. So you can't double or triple dip is what the language is intended to provide. So I want to be very clear that this is a restriction that the union is willing to accept, in the interest of, affording the option of the employee, whatever road they want to take, they can take that road, but then to make clear, okay, they're going down that path, they can't walk back and choose another path now. So, out of fairness to the city. So, and also it's fairly standard in 21.20, this is also for the benefit of the city, that probationary employees don't have the same rights to file grievances for disciplinary matters. That's fairly standard in the probationary period. They wouldn't have the right to say there wasn't just cause for ending my probation or something of that nature. And then 2121 is just language that IUPA provides in light of the holidays, that if there's a grievance being filed, and people are off for Christmas or for the Jewish holiday, that the timelines are told during that holiday season for the grievances, for both the benefit of management in terms of keeping track of the grievance and the union, so that nobody falls through the cracks during a holiday season. Okay, so I think 22 might provide some of the answers to what Madam City Manager was asking about in terms
Yep.
of return to work. This provides and fleshes out that a bit more and gives some more specifics as far as the callback. Supplemental pay, so we're proposing a shift diff for evening shift. And there are several cities in Volusia County that have shift diffs for night shift. And so, if Orange City adopted this, you wouldn't be a trendsetter, you would fall in line with a good number of the cities in the county that already do this. And I actually have the list right here. The computer fell asleep, so I had to boot it back up. You just bear with me for one moment. This data is according to the most recent, which is 2016. Florida Department of Law Enforcement, they do, the CGSTC does their CJAP survey of all the police departments and sheriff's offices in the state. And so we discovered that Daytona Beach Police Department, according to this data, Edgewater, New Smyrna, Ormond Beach, and Ponce Inlet Police Department, they all do an evening shift diff. So we have 5 different cities. by way of reference.
We'll give you the funds and look at contract.
Is that one
What
that
do
you handle,
what do
Mr. Rendell?
What do you think, Bob?
Sure.
Is that one of yours?
Bob and I negotiated it. It has to be good, right?
Wow.
A 3-year deal, wasn't it?
It was. And we renewed it for another 3 years with Gary Conway.
Oh, awesome.
All right.
So Article 24, training and tuition, we provide an incentive pay for degrees, associates, bachelors, and masters, and then discuss.
This is the state money.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, aren't we doing it?
yeah, it's the state money. Easy.
Do we have a choice?
What?
Do we have
No, I
a
didn't
choice?
think we had a choice, but
We don't.
I was wondering.
You have a choice, if you don't do it, they just hold back a lot of money.
Yeah.
from
Yeah, I was
you,
gonna
so
say, it's
you
not
do
a
have a
bad thing.
choice, but
Depends on.
It's gonna cost you money to say no, though.
25, from what I understand, sometimes there's discussion about getting a canine. Right now, the city utilizes the county canine. And so if there is a canine position that we want to be able to negotiate care and maintenance, it's another issue with the FLSA as far as compensation for time taking care of the dog. So we just wanted to put in a little placeholder. We heard a rumor that this might be something that could happen down the road, so to prepare for that, we just wanted to be able to reopen this to discuss that topic. And so Article 26, we are proposing a labor management committee, and since, of course, this is our first contract, we're proposing this as a way to have a quarterly meeting to really be able to air anything that management's thinking about, anything that the union's thinking about, concerns from the guys on the ground. It can be a powerful tool to prevent and discuss issues before they start. You know, if something could become a grievance, but maybe it can be resolved by discussing it in the quarterly meeting, and that way a grievance doesn't even need to be filed. It's just to have a line of communication. Oh, by the way, we're thinking of changing this policy, but that impacts, you know, your, you know, pay or terms of conditions of work, and so we, you know, this is something that's gonna have to be negotiated, so we wanted to bring it up. Just a means to establish a conversation and, you know, try to resolve issues positively or anticipate them before they arise. We're open to any type of structure that you know the city would like to put forth. We just, by way of suggestion, 3 union reps, 2 reps, you know, on the committee designated by the city manager, and then 2 by the police chief. So there's a presence by the city itself, the police department, and the union.
That's more people than we have in the command staff.
I mean, it's that's why I also put up to 2 representatives. So if you just want to put 1, then you can put 1. So, but if both, for example, the chief and the deputy chief wanted to be on the committee, which would be fantastic, then, you know, it affords that. You know, if both, you know, if there were 2 individuals from human resources that wanted to be on, it allows that, but it doesn't mandate.
That's the entire human resources right there.
It's like an assistant.
You have to negotiate for it.
So, it keeps it open. You know, I understand, you know, we're not dealing with a teeming metropolis like Chicago, you know, but, it allows some variance and involvement. So it makes clear that the committee is advisory only. The union can't bring something to the, you know, to the city at this meeting and say, police department, you have to do this. You know, it's just for discussing ideas and in an advisory capacity. The union can't hold the police department to something, you know, to a particular conversation that takes place that hasn't been memorialized in some type of MOU or agreement. You know, and then 26.4 indicates it's a quarterly basis, but if there's a need for additional meetings, then the parties can agree to have those. It really intended to be a tool to just have a conversation and another means and avenue to resolve and discuss issues, to be collaborative. And that is the last proposal that we have for you for today. So if my list serves me correct, at this point, we've provided recognition, non-discrimination, seniority, bulletin boards, IUPA representatives in union business, union deductions, layoff and recall, uniforms, longevity, work week and overtime, special benefits, advanced vacation pay, bereavement leave, court appearances, return to work, supplemental pay, training and tuition, personnel records, discipline and discharge, the grievance and arbitration procedure, care and maintenance of canines, the savings clause. We have most, you really have a pretty sizable collection now of proposals, including those issues that are non-monetary, that are of import to the union. Are there any proposals that the city has for us today, for us to consider?
Well, actually, let us take a caucus first.
Okay.